Okay, so we'll go over our topic. So the plan for today is, so this is a flow chart that'll kind of tell you what you should be looking for. If you're not getting showings, or if you are getting showings, if you're not getting any offers, kind of tells you when you would need to use some of these other strategies and when you just need to be patient. So basically, the rule of thumb is that if you're getting showings, but you're not getting any offers, then your price is probably close, because it's obviously people are still showing up to see the house. So you could do some tweaks on like the condition of the house and things like that, or presentation, or making sure that it's, ready to show. As far as price goes, you probably don't have to do a whole lot of adjusting and things like that on price. If you're not getting any showings and you're not getting any offers, then you either have to change what it's looking like online, like change your pictures up and things like that to make it more attractive, or adjust your price down. 90% of the time, I would say if you're not getting any showings at all, it's because of price, because someone can tell based on that price, yeah, I don't want to live in that area. I don't want to live, with this style of house, whatever the case may be. If it's a tiny condo or something like that, and you have it overpriced, then they're probably not even going to come look at it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood. Okay, my next door neighbor's house, my house, well, our value went up with the next door neighbor's house, but that house used to be an absolute dump until someone came in and fixed it up. What do I do in that situation where the house across the street is just trash, but the rest of the neighborhood is incredibly desirable and typically a house will go in a day?
I hate to say you can disregard that house across the street. If it's going to be very obvious to anybody that's looking at your house that, hey, I'm going to be looking at this all the time,
We have to put up a privacy fence and everything.
it's gonna play a factor. You may not get quite as high dollar, but it also depends on what type of competition you're seeing as far as buyers that are interested. If buyers are struggling to find a house like yours, then it's probably gonna go ahead and sell, regardless of, that factor. Because somebody's gonna think, hey, I want this house, somebody else is gonna want this house, I'm gonna go ahead and write an offer on it, even though we'll have to deal with this, issue, and a lot of houses have things like that, you don't necessarily always have to adjust your price on the front end, but if it's not selling and you have like a weird neighbor situation. I guess my two thoughts would be, as far as from like a pricing side, there's probably not a lot you can do, because the thing is, if you have a house listed at 460 and you lower the price to 450, the same buyers that are going to show up are still going to see the house across the street.
Right.
You may be better off, as far as like from an agent standpoint, you're giving your sellers advice on how to sell that house. You may say, hey, Mr. Neighbor, if I pay to have this outside cleaned up, or your junk moved to the back of your house or whatever, would you let me do that? I'll pay for it.
So you can do that. Okay.
Well,
didn't know.
obviously with their permission,
Yeah.
but same thing with like, if you have a situation, we'll cover this a little bit in a minute. The same thing if you have a situation with like, dogs barking incessantly, or,
That would be my house.
I don't know. Cars that are parked, cars that are parked like, where they shouldn't be or whatever, you can definitely say, hey, can I give you, $100 to move these cars for the day and park
They
them,
keep pushing. for an
down the
HOA
street or
to-
something else,
Nobody wants to join the HOA, so.
There's ways, obviously, if you don't have an HOA, that's where you go into the issue of, there's not a lot you can do about it.
Then one lady in a whole neighborhood that keeps pushing it and nobody wants to sign on to it.
Now, what you can do, even without an HOA, if it is like an eyesore and stuff, there are certain regulations for Knox County that they can't do certain things or have to do certain things.
Yeah.
We had an issue, so I live in Broadacres, we don't have an HOA. We did, but it expired in like the late 80s, and nobody renewed it, which is great for people that don't want an HOA. Because my grass is always too high for whatever an HOA standard is. But one of my neighbors had a tree fall in their yard during the bad storms that happened, a couple of months ago, and they didn't immediately get it cut up and taken away. And somebody called Knox County on them, and Knox County came and said, well, we're going to charge you $800 to clean this. If you don't clean it up, we're going to clean it up. And it wasn't that bad. it was mostly confined to the side of their house and stuff. So I don't know what the rules are as far as reporting something like that. And do you want to be that person that is, calling the county on something?
Yeah.
Or can you just, particularly in the case of listing a house, can you just say, hey, you know, we can help you
It can
solve
be
this
rectified.
problem or whatever you're dealing with, you know? And some people would be fine with it. Some people just don't have the time or they don't have somebody to physically move stuff, you know, around their house or whatever.
We actually did have to do that with the neighbor across the street. They had junk cars sitting there it actually ended up being on Google Maps
Yeah.
showing disabled car.
Yeah.
But we had the city, or not the city, but the county came and got it because unpacked
Yeah.
car, junk car sitting in the road. But
Yeah, we had an issue with that, the flip that we bought, there was a Corvette that had been rammed into the
Yeah,
house.
into the house. So, yes.
And
We're great.
the county called some tow company to come get them. There was that and a motorcycle too, but anyway.
Yeah, it was just, their contract.
now it was, that car is even goes right, we back out, we almost hit it every time.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law actually did hit it once, but.
Gotcha.
But anyway, sorry, didn't mean to.
No, you're okay, you're all right. So let me get you pass out. Yeah. Anything you wanted to add about the flow chart?
So I think that's just basically it. It's just to look at it before you panic, if the seller is stressing you out about, hey, what's going on, just follow that flow chart. Is it getting any showings? And, did you mention? No, okay. So is it getting any showings? And then have you received any offers? Those are two most important things. Then we'll go to this next different strategies, because then you get into, okay, I have gotten showings, but why have I not gotten any offers? So.
The other thing that I would say too, particularly if your sellers are starting to worry, you're 30 days in or something like that. Particularly with the market that we came from, over the last 2 years where everything is selling in a day or 2 days or a week. I guess my thought would be just having them keep in mind that the market has shifted, if it takes a month to sell, it takes a month to sell. So look at your comps for that house and not just average days on the market for all of, everything. Because if your house is 600,000, it's going to take longer to sell than a $250,000 or $300,000 house. So look at comps and see what their average days on the market is, and then you can kind of tell your people, okay, I know we've been on the market for 40 days, but the average days on market is 65, so you're still, under what is the norm. So let's just be patient, or here's what we can do to kind of adjust price or, change it up. So. All
So
right.
that, to me, that's always the first thing I do is double check that pricing and see if you need to be watching to see what availability in the area too. Have they been reducing their prices and you weren't reducing their prices? That sometimes affects you too. But it strictly is, you will get a lot of feedback. So the important part is when you have your showings, if you're not getting feedback from your people, pick up the phone and call them from these agents, because a lot of people I've noticed this year are horrible.
I
at sending
never,
feedback.
ever barely got any feedback on any of my
I
listings.
haven't either. It's just that people stop.
Yeah, so I
Anyway.
did have it in there on the checklist to call.
Yes.
Call.
And I
call
didn't
again.
get, I didn't get
Yeah.
as many, I didn't get as many requests this year either though. So I bet the spam filters are catching a lot of those emails that used to request feedback. So,
True.
The other thing that I'll say is it's to your advantage to go ahead and ask for feedback from the beginning, even if you don't know that you're going to be on the market for 30 or 45 days or 2 months. And it's kind of crazy that 30 or 45 days seems like a lot now because, 5 or 6 years ago, it took 3, 4, 5, 6 months to sell a house. It wasn't abnormal for a house to be on the market for 4 or 6 months. Okay, so if you okay, go ahead.
So the next part was, as far as pricing goes, so run those comps. And then if you decide, yeah, I really do need to reduce, everybody else is, or the comps are saying, I didn't, sometimes what happened to me one time was a house had slid in between my listing and, the showings, and they had listed it for significantly lower and sold it. So I had missed it, in between. So if you check it regularly, you know, but the next step of that is, okay, I've got to do it. So you have to talk with them about why you have to reduce it. And then the important step is, what day do I put that reduction in? Because you want the most views on that reduction, because it's going to show on the MLS that, it's a reduced price. So the best day to do it is,
I typically suggest like a Wednesday or Thursday, because then that carries into the weekend, you know, I wouldn't do a price reduction on a Monday, because I don't feel like you're gonna have as many showings. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as you are, if you do it on a Thursday and you can have showings Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know.
And it's just opinion. I always do mine on Friday, but toward the later end of the week is the best, definitely before Saturday.
The other benefit to that is if you do it toward the end of the week, then you can kind of pair it with an open house or some other strategies that we go over to. Just to kind of have more of an impact on your open house, or, you know, your open house has more of an impact on the price reduction.
So, and then within that pricing point, then you want to talk about the market absorption.
So, generally, market absorption is going to be calculated by determining how long it's going to take the house to sell based on those comps, and then you can base it on the market in general also. So, we can do a class on market absorption altogether, but there's a quick look on the MLS on the homepage. I think it's on everybody's homepage by default, but you can add it. Where it gives you a chart of how long the total market absorption would be. So based on how many houses are on the market, how long would it take for all of those houses to sell if you didn't add more houses? So it's typically like, I don't know, 3.5 months right now, 4 months or something like that. Anyway, don't quote me on that number because it's been a bit since I've done that chart. But,
So just to remind people what the market absorption is, it's basically a rate that it's just is the market, how many houses are on the market? And how long will these houses last? They should be, they're selling every few days, then you will have an actual time period, and that's what the market absorption rate is.
The other thing that I'll say about like initial pricing strategy, I feel like the last few years, if you had a house that was, gonna list at 450, most people would lean high, they'd go ahead and list it at 460 because you could, so if you had a seller that was saying, hey, yeah, I know you're saying 450, but we really think 465 or 470 is the way to go. You can take that advice as far as, or take that, preference as far as, getting the listing, but I would just have that conversation that, hey, we may need to reduce the price or go ahead and get a strategy in place, whether you want to go ahead and do that on your listing agreement, which I've done, or you just want to tell them, hey, we can go ahead and, this is fine, we'll list it at 475, but if we need to reduce, we can reduce in, 2 weeks or whatever the case may be. I've also had that outlined in my listing agreement before, because then you don't have to have any difficult conversations, or, it's already kind of planned out in their mind, hey, we're going to list at 470. In 2 weeks, if we don't have any offers, we're going to go to 465. 2 more weeks, if we don't have any offers, we're going to go to 458, or whatever that case may be. You can outline that however you think is appropriate.
Oh my gosh, I love having that listing agreement. That's like, that's so cool.
It just makes it easier.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. Already agreed upon.
And they're getting what they're hoping for, they're listing at that higher price, but you're also, getting some reasonable, info in there too, as far as, what we might have to do. And if it sells at 470, then awesome. And if it doesn't, then you've already kind of got that outlined. It also depends on what seller you're working with. If they're easy to work with, then you don't necessarily have to worry about, putting it on the listing agreement. But if you feel like it's going to be a battle every time you talk to them, then you can go ahead and, outline it on there. So, and you could even do it as kind of your standard operating procedure, we're going to list at 450, because, even if you think 450 is the price, and that it almost makes it, like shift proof in the market, because then if the price starts going down, in the neighborhood or whatever, then you're already kind of ahead of the game.
And I think that takes away the one problem I had with one time I had to do price reduction and the seller wasn't as open to it. They kind of kept saying, well, why, and I'm like, would have to kind of reinvent the wheel each time and show the comps and show this. So it's like, if that was already laid out, no, why, no argument from it. It's like, hey, we've gotten to that point, let's go, and yeah, I like that.
So are you calling them too,
Calling them for,
to let them know it's you're gonna?
sure, you can. I guess it also goes back to how invested or aware are they? A lot of people, if they know, hey, in 2 weeks it's going to go down on price, I may not worry about that first 2 week mark. You might let them know, 2 more weeks later. And it also depends on how much contact you're having with them. if you have a live listing, I really think you should be talking to them once a week to let them know, okay, this is how many views we've gotten and things like that. Cause you can pull a lot of that data and it makes them feel better about, okay, people are seeing my house, this many people are saving my house, this is what the agent is doing this week to try to push my house, and it just,
And you're giving them the feedback too. This is the feedback they've been saying about your house, you know, and if it's negative, you gotta tell it.
Yeah.
I tell them, you know, I'm
I
sorry.
actually sent that link that shows the views and stuff, and my seller said it refreshes for her.
yeah.
She would just go in every day and look, and it would be all the information for that day. I was like, oh, well, that's easy. I don't have to send it every day to you, you know? So yeah, she liked that a lot.
Yeah,
That's a good option too, because it'll pull views from Zillow and things like that that are done via the IDX feed, and so
Yeah.
it's helpful too.
And it was just one conversation of like telling her what was what.
Yeah.
And then she would be like, oh, saw this today, and like even tell me stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like it was nice for her to have
And
that.
it works really well too, like if you choose to do like a Facebook ad or any of those like online postings or anything like that, you post it to Instagram or whatever. If you use any of the IDX feeds, be it your feed from our website or Zillow or the Knoxville IDX feed, which I'm not as much of a fan of because I don't feel like it provides the same experience or views kind of thing, then it'll pull all of that too. And so then you can be like, hey, we started an ad this week. That's why you're seeing more views on your house than.
Yeah, that makes sense.
so, do you want to discuss incentives now? So with the price reduction, sometimes you don't have that built into the listing agreement, which most people don't actually, but it is a good idea to do it, but you will reduce it. Sorry, but then, you may need to be thinking about what incentives you could get. If people are not coming to show it very much is one thing that this will work on, but even if you're not receiving the offers, is to get incentives out there in the marketplace that the agent is going to see, the cooperating agent, such as, could be for the buyer, that you're saying that you're going to offer so much in closing costs for them, and that will move them toward your house, because they're going to see that if you put that information in the public area, then that, the person's going to see that, oh, they're giving us closing costs on this, let's go to this one. And also now we need to include, if they have a low rate loan that it's possible someone could assume, then with a better rate, then that's something to talk to your seller about, that, would you be willing to let me investigate letting them assume the loan? Because if they have enough cash to put down, they can do that, but it has to be someone who has cash, because usually people have enough down, especially in this market, that they're gonna need some money in order to get this loan.
So the issue with that is FHA and VA2, as far as I know, will let you assume the loan, so whatever the rate is. So the problem with that is the last few years, there weren't as many FHA loans because people were using cash in order to make their offer more attractive, going over asking price or anything like that. And house prices have increased so much in the last 3 or 4 years that if they used an FHA loan to buy their house for $250 in 2015 and now it's worth $450, in order to assume that loan, you're going to have to pay cash for that difference in equity. So it can work though. Typically, the best likelihood of that being an option right now is if they bought it in the last couple of years and they used an FHA loan, then they can probably work with their bank to see what the process is for somebody assuming that loan. And it can be a huge factor in the price. I mean, as far as the monthly payment for a prospective buyer, because if you had a house that was 300,000, you were paying 3%, okay, in interest, that would be 9,000 a year. Okay, and now if you're paying 6%, that's going to be 18,000 a year. So that's $9,000 in interest every year, and that's a big, shift. So
But something to investigate with your personal lender is, okay, I've got to come up with $200,000 in order to assume this loan. Can you make me a different type loan to get this 200,000 so I can get that loan and this one can come out cheaper? So that can happen too. So it is a partnership with lenders, but that's something to think about, is that you might have to go that angle as far as just their.
Kind of like a bridge loan?
Well, yeah, the bridge loan, yeah.
Well, yeah, in a way, but it's a bridge loan as far as you are paying that gap, you know, from what the previous loan was versus the new purchase price amount. The issue with getting those loans to do that is both of those loans are gonna wanna be first position as far as if it were to foreclose, who's going to have first rights to get their money back, you know? So that's the hurdle that you were gonna come up with if you try to get that second loan. But there are lenders out there that do have products, and it depends a lot on your buyer. Do they qualify for that type of situation? You know, is there such a low likelihood of any kind of foreclosure action happening that they would be, you know, feasibly be able to get that kind of loan? So,
So for the buyer, so, you know, be thinking closing costs, changing the loan situation, but also just the day of close. If your seller is willing to do an extended close for whatever reason, they could put in there, you know, seller is willing to either lease it back to the, you know, lease it back to the seller where they stay. They don't want them to move out yet, or possibly move in early before they're quite closed. But it's just to be open about with the sellers that this could come up, you know, if they want to change when they want to occupy the property.
another thing, depending on if it's a condition issue and that's why you think it's not selling, hey, you know, not necessarily just like being show ready, but like there's a roof issue or whatever. Allowances is a good option for that kind of situation, and they can put some money in escrow after closing to make sure that those repairs happen. Again, that's going to be largely dependent on your loan officer and how they want to work that, the mechanics of that, but it is doable. I mean, a lot of title companies didn't, the past few years, they shifted where they didn't want to hold, you know, escrow afterward. But right now, title companies are pretty eager to get business. And so they'd probably be willing to hold some escrow money while a repair happens. And that kind of
But on that subject, don't go past a year, just from personal experience. Be sure if you do have that escrow amount to put an end date for the escrow. That the repairs or whatever have to be finished by a certain date.
And if
Because it
they're
really
wrong with that
hurts.
money, explain where that money gets released to if it's not done.
Because it can really hurt your contract that the title company does not want to hold this money and maintain it forever. So,
Would you need to have estimates, like say there was a roof issue and you said, hey, we're gonna offer $7,000, would you need to have an estimate from a company saying $7,000
You
for this
do, and
repair?
most of the time, the lender is gonna want you to escrow 1.5 times whatever it is.
Okay,
So if it's 7, then it would be 10.5, you know, they would wanna hold an escrow, just in case they run into an issue while they're doing the roof.
okay,
and on that issue, they'll also want them to be contracted. You know, have a contract.
right, yeah. And I've had it before where that wasn't necessarily in the beginning, hey, we're gonna give you this money for this, but then, you know, they had to have the, like you said, the contractor's name, insurance,
Yeah.
you know, all of his,
Yeah, particular.
yes,
Well,
business license.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can have escrow for repairs to be done. You can also, like I had one situation where the back half of the backyard of, let's say, house A was encumbered. The guy had bought the house next door and the lender released the loan, but they didn't release the loan on the, like the back third. It's like a third of an acre or something like that. And so my buyer still wanted to close and just buy half of her backyard, but she wanted him to work with his bank to get that released. It was a clerical error where they didn't punch in the right, you know, number to release it. And so he was gonna have to work with his bank and get them to release it. And the title company was taking responsibility and saying, hey, we missed this, you know, and we'll work with the bank to get it released. But it took like 6 or 8 months and my buyer didn't wanna, you know, not have a house for 6 or 8 months.
Mhm.
So we closed, they kept like 15,000 in escrow just to make sure that he would release that portion. And then he did, and he got that money. But the title company, they, like you say, they don't want to hold the money, you know, it's like one of those like outstanding paperwork issues after closing that nobody wants to like, you know.
Yeah.
Is this
indefinitely.
ever
So,
going to happen?
Yeah, so an end date,
particularly on that one, because it was like they were waiting on another title company to do their thing and fix their problem, you know, and so, you know, anyway. But Paramount held it for me. They were good about it. They, you know, handled, I didn't have to do anything after closing, so they definitely did that.
But speaking on those items, you know, something else to think about for the buyer, you know, to offer the buyer is let's say that you have an extremely nice patio set that every time someone comes and looks at the house, they say, oh my gosh, I love that patio set. Then, put that in the public description that seller's willing to, negotiate for this patio set or, I've had patio sets come up, I've had kitchen islands come up,
Oh my gosh, yes.
where they, and I had one that, yes, your island's beautiful, but isn't it worth just going ahead and selling the house and letting them have this island? But yeah, sometimes you are trying to explain to them which is better for you in the long run, to sell this with the island or without the island.
Mhm.
We had one, you and I had one that, the buyer, he was paying cash, so obviously that's a factor here, but he wanted the whole house furnished exactly as it was. They
Wow.
had a chalkboard wall that they had drawn like a mural on, and they wanted that to be the same and all
Yeah,
this
see
other
the
stuff.
artwork,
Wow.
It's like, okay,
That was an interesting one. For a
I
lot-
think that's
for a
when it
lot of
also had
different
the cow
reasons.
rug,
It did.
yes,
Yeah.
spotted
And
cow.
it had pecan floors.
It
that
was
were like-
beautiful, yeah.
that I
Wow.
don't know that I had seen pecan floors in a house. I mean, you see
Right.
pictures and stuff, but I don't know that I had seen, and I don't know that I've seen them since then either. It was a very tall house.
Yeah.
It was a 3-story house, and it was the footprint of it was, I mean, it was
Small.
just very like a tower. It was
Huh.
an interesting house, but, anyway, yeah.
So as far as the buyer, that's the type of thing you'll be thinking what you can offer the buyer, but the other thing is, what can you offer the agent, which of course, that's gonna be an increase on their commission. So the two angles to go there, are you gonna give up some of your commission in order to make it happen, or do you go back to the seller and say something like, hey, what would you think if we offered them a $2,000 bonus? Would you be willing to contribute towards a $2,000 bonus or whatever it is? Because, you have to think about both sides, if it's coming out of your pocket or their pocket. But, so just be thinking about that. Either you're looking at either the buyer's getting an incentive or the buyer's agent getting an incentive. Just getting someone in there that, you can get this house sold to.
The other thing that I would say about it is, as far as the availability of the house and the readiness of the house to be shown. So if you have sellers and they're wanting to do like a 3 or 4 day notice before they can have a showing, it's gonna impact how many showings you have, because people don't wanna book a showing for 4 days, and then, because their thought is, well, we might find something in a day or two, then we'll just have to cancel it. Let's just not worry about that listing or whatever. So just as flexible as they can be and as short notice as they can reasonably, do. And a lot of that is setting expectations up front of, hey, you're probably gonna have showings that the agent wants to show it in 2 hours. So, just kind of try to keep it basically ready. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time, but try to keep it basically ready. And then you get a showing request, we'll do like a 2-hour notice, and then you can just leave before the showing starts. Because that makes a big difference too. And the other thing is just, when it comes to show ready, the house just needs to be, clean and smell good. And those are all things that are difficult conversations to have, because you don't want to be like, hey, your house is filthy. But it does need to not smell and not, offend people when they walk in and, so.
Or smell like perfume, like somebody's gone through and just sprayed on everything.
Yeah, and the
Like,
candles, that's something else to bring out.
Yeah,
People really
some
bad.
people just go nuts.
Yeah.
And
And it's like, no, you need to, a lot of people are allergic to candles, and so just don't
Yeah,
do
I've
it.
been really shocked by the unreadiness of listings sometimes, like just utterly shocked. I mean, like the one the other day where they were calling you, it was just, I'm just shocked, and my buyers are like, why didn't they prepare for me? Like, I didn't come up unannounced, and I don't know, it's frustrating, because then you're like, man, I don't wanna just, I don't know. The cleanliness, I think, sometimes shows the inside of the house too, the walls, and it makes you think, do they even take care of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
it
when you're-
really,
When you're walking through with them, with the listing, when you're listing it,
Mm.
I mean, sometimes you do have to say things that hurt people's feelings, because it's like, you're gonna need to clean this wall, and this door's gonna have to be completely clean where the dog's been scratching to get out,
Yeah.
muddy paws. You've gotta clean that up. So,
I had a showing once that the house was gross. I mean, it was just gross, but I remember going into the master bedroom and they had their underwear drying on the light fixture on the thing. They had set it up there to dry.
Oh my
you know? And it was just like,
Yeah.
why would you leave this like this? You know, and they just really didn't care.
Yeah.
House sold, it's a good deal, you know, it really was from a guy who likes to flip things and think about, is this a good deal? It was a good deal, you know, but it was weird. I took a picture of that because it was like, this is weird. It's just one of those things that I'm gonna remember,
Yeah.
you know, happening.
Who was it who had the snake? The giant
Yeah,
snake?
well, that was my buyer. He's still, I'll show pictures in a minute, but, he has a bobcat. He has a Cayman alligator that he has these in his house just hanging out, and then snakes. So when we were buying a house, he wanted one that was partially below ground level. That way, the heating and cooling wouldn't be as severe, you know, because it would be underground level. And so he had like 60 containers full of snakes. But Becky went to that closing for me.
Yeah.
I was out of town, and I just began the snakes.
She knew he was in person, but I like
Oh,
to
yeah,
think how
super
many
great guy.
snakes he had.
Super great guy.
But sometimes you have to have the conversations with them about the cleanliness of the house, the smells in the house. You know, it could be dogs or cats. I had one buyer that as soon as we walked in the house, she knew instantly that there was a cat in there, because she would just start tearing up. She was so allergic. So you'd have to get back out. So that's something else to remind your sellers. I don't think we put this on here, but if you do have cats, you need to notify it needs to be in the listing that there are cats. Because I've been in many a listing, you all probably have too, where you didn't know there was a cat in there, and you open the door and the cat takes off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're like trying to chase this cat that's.
Well, and I went in the house the other day that said the dog was there, and I knew the dog was there, and I am a dog person, okay? Like, I've been with all kinds of dogs, mean, nice, all the things. This dog was aggressive, and if I wasn't as strong, like I told my buyer, all right, walk in, don't put your hands down, you know, the dog is just at us, like, and so I kind of like tried to be alpha, you know, and I'd calm the dog down and everything was fine, but like, if someone that wasn't a dog person went in there, they could have gotten bit, you know, like the dog was aggressive. It was, ooh, yeah.
When we looked at our house, it was vacant. The people had been out for about 6 months. The next door neighbors, the bad ones, they were letting their dogs in our fenced yard. And they said that the previous or the current owner, now we know, anyway, current owner at that time, let them do that, but in all actuality, they didn't. And we couldn't go in the backyard because the dogs, they would jump up on you, they'd knock you down.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation?
Call the pound people.
They didn't have a fenced yard, we did.
But it
And-
wasn't, they weren't your dogs.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, we didn't own the house at that, we were just.
Were
trying
they
to
still
look at the
standing
house.
there?
Huh?
Were they standing there with like saying, oh, here's my dog?
Yeah, it's like, can you, you know,
Yeah.
dogs are, I'm trying to show this property.
Yeah, I'd be like, get these dogs out of here now. Like,
Yeah,
Get 'em out.
in that situation, from like a buyer agent side, I would just let the listing agent know, hey, there's these random dogs in the backyard, and I don't know if that's
I think
kosher.
he tried to rectify it, but nothing ever got done. I mean, finally, I mean, even when we were moving, we had 4 dogs. We were moving in and the dogs were still in the backyard.
Oh, yeah,
I'd take a hose.
Yeah.
I would take a hose, honestly, and be like, get out of here.
Yeah, at that point, I'd definitely just call animal control, because at that point, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a more of a legal issue or
Yeah, I mean, they had problems inspecting the house, everything, just because these
Oh,
dogs were.
man.
And the
Yeah.
other agent didn't do anything about it.
And she tried, I mean, she did try. She contacted the owner and they said, no, we did not give permission for those dogs to be in the backyard.
yeah,
I don't know.
gotcha.
Anyway, just a real life thing there. So,
Okay, well, so we can move on now to some things that you can do, as far as like marketing and putting it out there and things like that.
Did you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna say sort of, it's about, well, you know, when they put on there, they're gonna give you $5,000 in painting or carpeting.
Mhm, mhm.
Now, it wasn't on the listing agreement, it was given to me verbally by the seller.
I remember.
And
this.
I remember
the
this one
agents.
too.
Yeah, and I didn't know, I know this, I know now the contract supersedes the listing agreement, right? But it never was listed till after we had this offer. And
Yeah.
my buyer had heard it from 2 different sources,
Yeah,
that she was gonna get $5,000.
yeah.
And
Well-
then they went, you didn't put it in the contract. And I went, I didn't
No,
know.
I thought
had
you were
put it
going to
in
honor
there.
your
Yeah.
Yeah.
word, but they.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and well, they made, and I refused to eat all 5,000 of it, but I said, why don't you two cough up 500 apiece and we'll give her at least 1,500.
Yeah.
They wouldn't.
Yeah,
And-
okay, so as far as, that's not how it should work, obviously, from like a being ethical standpoint on the other agent, you know, but. The contract from a legal standpoint is always gonna supersede anything that's on the MLS or anything like that. So if the MLS says, hey, we're including washer, dryer, refrigerator and stove, and you don't list those things on your contract, or at least, and I don't advise this, but at least put as per the MLS or something, if you just forget, they can take their appliances and it's not going, you're not gonna be able to get those appliances, because the argument is that when you are writing that legal contract, you would be waiving those things that were offered on the MLS, you know, so that's why the contract supersedes what might be offered or what would have been, particularly verbally. There's just no way to prove what was said verbally, you know?
I was
Oh,
actually on the
hardly.
other side of that. I
Yeah.
had a listing where we were like, we're gonna offer a home warranty, and all the offers came in, and the one we ended up going with, they didn't put the home warranty in the contract.
Yeah.
No big deal, so we go on, you know, I don't order the home warranty because it's not in the contract, and so
Yeah.
then. Like day before closing, the buyer's agent's like, well, where's the home inspector, or where's the home warranty, where's the home warranty? I was like, oh, well, you guys. Waived that in your purchase agreement, and he
Yeah.
said, well, it was on the MLS, and I was like. You put it in your purchase agreement, you know, that you know home warranty, so I think it ended up, his buyer paid for it on his own or something.
Particularly with that, I mean, there's a clear box
Yes,
to
there is
check.
a
that you're
box.
not
Right,
asking for
right.
a home.
Right, that was the thing with that one, I was like, but you guys put no, you know, like the X
So
was
we
there,
didn't do it.
yeah, and it wasn't like they added it.
All of the stuff I've been through, I've never, you'll see that on there, $2,000 or $500 toward. And I guess either they negotiated the price out and they let it go, but I've never had it be that cut and dry.
Yeah,
I mean, of course, it was
Well, I mean-
divorced and they were fighting.
Next.
Other factors.
One lawyer was saying, if they're divorcing and they say they're doing great, call me. Call me first.
Yeah,
And I was like, okay, all right, I'll learn the hard way on that one.
gotcha.
Anyway,
so yeah, another thing we haven't talked about before we get to mail outs and that type of thing is, are the pictures any good? Because sometimes, wow, I know you all have seen some rotten pictures out on the internet that you know they just took with their not so nice cell phone, I mean.
And
cell
didn't
phones can
even
take
hold it
great
straight
pictures.
either,
Yeah.
like it was like.
Well,
Yeah.
but my favorite is the conditions.
Oh, yeah.
Those dirty houses, they're dirty in the pictures.
Mhm.
Yes.
I don't know how anyone wants to go.
Cause that's all they have to look at. That's my buyers, some of them right now, they're like, I know this is really gross, but can we just go see it? I'm like, sure, you know, it might be worth it, but they're in that hard price range, you know, like 220, 250, so.
Yeah. But you know, just go back and look at your own pictures or get, you know, a fellow agent, say, okay, will you look at these pictures? They look good enough, or you think I should redo them?
Mhm.
Because you might need to redo them. But.
I had
that's a good
I had a
point.
seller with land, he asked me to redo the pictures halfway through, cause it was, the pictures I had gotten Andrew to do with the drone, it was like in winter, so all the trees were dead. And so it's like, it had been a year and a half, and he's like, well, can you go back and redo those pictures? And now that it's all fluffy and green now, I
Yes.
was like, sure, I'll drive.
I know. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, so, but yeah, they made sense, you know.
That's true, and along that same line, you know, Christmas trees and
Mhm.
Easter egg stuff, you know, make sure that it's not, doesn't show that it's been on the market forever
Yeah, true.
by having a Christmas tree in there 6 months.
It's Valentine's Day. Why do you have a Christmas tree there?
Yeah. So,
And if you're getting feedback that says, yeah, the living room was so much bigger than we thought it was gonna be, or things that are positive feedback that have to do with the photos, make note of that and maybe realize that, hey, maybe I just need to get different photos taken of certain areas. Cause I did have that happen on a listing that was that was I think you told me that it was for that house out in Maryville, you know, the big house, and you were like, yeah,
yeah.
from the pictures, we didn't know it would be this or that.
Right,
you
yeah. But it was
Um,
so an in-person house anyway, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There.
And so that's part of it too, is to count on your fellow agents to give you input into what, what you saw, what you believe. They may pick up on one little item like that with Bill, the size of the room. Or even,
And Amy and I were like, tell her to turn the AC down during showings, because we were sweating. We
That's
were
true,
literally
too.
drenched, because it was like, I don't remember what she had it set on, but it was high, it was like a warm house, which some people live in warm houses and are fine, but Amy and I were, we were like, we're sweating over
yeah, it's like, does their AC work?
here. They have that really cool, like, little sunrooms though, that, oh my gosh, I would sit out there if it's warm,
Yeah, they had like 6 sunrooms.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's 2 pages. So this is a photography, prep checklist that I give to, my sellers, but it's also good, like guidelines, most of it, it's good guidelines for if you, for showings, like being ready for showings and things like that. So anyway, it's available in the file section on our Facebook page too. Yeah, just things like putting, the cat litter away and stuff like that,
And
Yeah.
hiding it really.
or like cars, like I do not understand why people leave, and then this is a pet
Oh
peeve
my
of
gosh,
mine,
yes.
it's not a pet peeve for everybody, but leaving a car in the driveway when you're taking a picture of the house. I was always told the whole reason that you're taking some of the personal things down is so that people can envision their stuff, and a part of that is, hey, would my car fit in the driveway, is it gonna, work? So.
Same thing with showings. Make sure and tell your people to leave that driveway open
Mhm.
for the buyer's agent to bring their person.
Garages.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big thing in Phoenix. Your car had to fit in the garage, otherwise.
You
your
couldn't
car
live
melts.
Yeah. Okay, so, we talked about pictures. Again, as far as the bad neighbor, behaviors and things like that. From a behavior standpoint, it's harder. I think you had one that was a weird one.
Yeah, I meant to ask, like, should you say it, should you not? Cause I had one where it was like, then I knew ahead of time the neighbor was gonna be horrible. Like my seller said, hey, this guy's gonna be a mess, so it's like, do you say, I think I ended up saying like vague kind of things, but was like, I will be
Yeah.
careful, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Is yours, did you put that in the listing? I remember someone.
I put it in the showing instructions,
so,
something
yes.
like, I didn't necessarily say he was gonna be there and
Nightmare.
annoying or nightmare, but I was like, hey, there's a seller that might try to persuade your buyer not to buy. Cause he was wanting like, literally, like, he said, I want a nice gay couple in there. And I'm like, excuse me? And he's like, trying to put the house on Craigslist on his own and all this stuff. So it's kind of like a, hey, if you see him, I think I said try to maybe avoid him, or I don't know, but yeah, that one
But
was
you could get into
nerve-wracking.
that with divorces too, if the
Yeah.
husband wouldn't leave, for instance, I had
Oh,
one where the husband
gosh.
didn't leave, and it's like, you.
I ran into that with minority couples. I was like, I had a neighbor of the house I was showing, and you could tell that they were not happy that I had brought
Yeah.
a minority couple to see this house. And I was a buyer's agent, and I was like,
I know, that is true.
these people are really nice.
Yeah.
Why are you acting this way?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that talks about kind of seller behaviors too, as far as they need to leave. Sometimes,
Oh my
and
God.
I've had some listings where they don't understand that you need to give these people privacy to look at your house. I know that's a weird thing for some people when they want to like be there in case that the buyers try to go through a drawer or something.
Mhm.
But they need to leave. I had one that, they didn't leave for the showings and it was just, kind of not an issue, but it's just awkward, and the agent, the showing agents would say things like, yeah, he didn't leave, he just stayed on the porch,
Yeah.
or whatever, they would make comments. So then, I told the seller, hey, the appraiser's coming on Thursday or whatever. He said, okay. I said, all right, well, I'll let you know, when it comes back and that kind of thing. And then I called them that afternoon, for something totally different. And he's like, yeah, the appraiser was such a nice guy. He and I talked for like 30 minutes, you know, and it's like, man, this whole time this appraiser was trying to just
Yeah.
do his job and look at this house and you were, you know, who knows, you know, and that's the thing, from our perspective, it's like, what are you telling the
Don't
appraiser?
tell them
Yeah,
anything.
exactly, yeah. What
Don't,
did you
know,
say?
Don't say bad things, you know,
Yeah.
we're under a flight path. I forgot to mention that in the listing or whatever the case may be.
Well, I had a seller one time there during my, I was meeting an HVAC guy and I couldn't get in the house, and sellers weren't supposed to be there. But they were, and they let me in, and she starts talking to me and like was very, like asking me questions, but I was being very vague, you know, cause I didn't wanna tell the seller anything. We're having an HVAC guy out, we're having a roofer out, we're having a foundation guy. I mean, he was asking for big stuff. And so then the listing agent calls me afterwards and she was like, I cannot believe you persuaded the sellers to go with this buyer. I was telling them not to go with this buyer. And she was like yelling at me and stuff. And I was like, I didn't know they were there. They talked to me. Like I couldn't just leave. And it was really awkward. So yes, the sellers being there, it was hard. It was like, I didn't know, you know, and of course I wasn't telling them anything, but from their perspective, when they called their agent, I'm sure, I don't know what they said, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Probably how nice you were. And she wasn't.
I know, yeah.
But so that's kind of it, what we're talking about as far as that type of behavior. But then when you need to really get active with the rest of the world socially, I guess is what I'm saying. One of them is that we're going to start something that we call, what do we decide to call it now? Open office tours. So another purchase we work with, they actually have the agents, if you have a listing that's not selling, you want input from your other fellow agents. Well, the best way to do it is for everybody to go together. And you have already prepared some sort of feedback form to give each one of these agents. Everyone goes in, they look through the house, they talk, and you have a great time because usually you have lunch or something like that where you do it. But then you feel that feedback out. It's wonderful to do that.
Yeah,
Because,
those.
We're gonna tell each other the flat out truth.
Mhm.
This house stinks to high heaven. Why have you not noticed this
Yeah.
before?
Well, I think,
Whatever it is.
I think your sellers too, at least I've had this one time where I had an opinion from another agent and the seller took that really seriously. They were like, thank you for asking a fellow agent and getting another professional perspective.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
So that is the best way, is to get professional, can't say it, perspective from your people.
I've heard of agencies taking their agents when they have a lot of houses listed
Mhm.
and just going from one house to the other.
Yeah, we used to do
Tour.
Yeah.
tours. All the
Yeah, that's
time.
what we're talking about essentially, if there are multiple at a time that would benefit from it, then we'll do, 2 or 3 that day or whatever. Even if it's just one,
It
we'll
is
just do
fun.
one. But you'd carpool, or whatever, or just meet there or whatever the case may be. And it just depends, if you can go to one that day, and swing by one and, you don't necessarily get to go to all 3 or whatever. But a lot of times it's almost just like and you can do it in conjunction with doing a broker open. The issue with a broker open is you have to try to get brokers to be there, what are you offering? Becky and I have a funny story about, we had a listing in Sweetwater
Yes,
and we were like, how do we get people to show up?
We weren't having
out of
people come to
Sweetwater?
see it.
Yeah, we weren't having showings. And so it's like, what kind of feedback can we get? And so we were like, well, we'll do Olive Garden,
yeah, because everybody likes Olive Garden.
Who's gonna pass up Olive Garden? That's how you get people to go down to Sweetwater. So we got Olive Garden, we got like 2 lasagnas
Yeah.
and salad and, all
Plenty
this
of food.
food,
Just heard.
and not a soul.
I was gonna
showed
say,
up to
did
that.
No
No,
one.
no one. I ended up calling one of my buyers that had bought like the year before and that was a police officer. And I was like, hey, if you're in the area and you want to come by and have some lasagna, feel free, because nobody else is doing that.
And take it back to the police station with you.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
Becky and I both took the lasagna home and froze those and, ate on
Ate
those
lasagna
for
for a
some-
year,
some-
but,
some
yeah.
months. But even, just so you know, even Olive Garden is not enough to convince people to drive to
not.
Sweetwater for another house, but,
So I think that's why you see so many people having brokers open and then they try to have liquor there.
Mhm.
That sounds like a great idea, but what they're not stopping to think about is the liability behind it. It's like you're not a bar,
And in Tennessee, the laws to serve alcohol and someone gets in trouble are bad. Like you will literally go to jail. If someone goes and gets in a car accident because you served them, you will literally, like, it's bad, it's really bad. Tennessee is not good about it.
Well, and even
Or
from
good, I
a
guess.
standpoint, of if you're inviting, realtors in general, professionals in general, and one of those people has an accident on the property, then you've exposed your seller to, hey, even if it's something as little as, they broke this or, whatever,
Yelled
or
in the
they
steps,
they
ripped
show
on
up
the
and they've already
sidewalk.
had a few drinks and you're not aware,
That
they,
too,
they
yeah.
just, so yeah, it can cause some issues, I hate to just rule it out altogether, because I know it is the popular thing, but you just have to be really careful about, how you're going
Yeah.
about it and your own, I don't know, disclosures, or even if that's putting up a sign that says, hey, do not continue to drink, here if you've already, reached
Yeah.
your limit or whatever the case
Yeah.
may be.
I know places that have done it, do it with tickets. They'll say,
Mhm.
you get 2 tickets, that's how you get 2 drinks.
Yeah, well, and you could, so I am licensed to bartend, if anyone ever feels like
Oh,
they really
wow.
do need to, yes. But there's also a company that I used to work for called Single Barrel Events, and if you felt like you had a budget to get another lender or a home inspector or something, you could make and have that bartender there because they're licensed, they're insured, and would take all of that responsibility off of you, but you do pay for that, so it'd be, probably $300 or $400 to have that bartender there for a few hours,
Interesting.
but they'll bring everything. I mean, the drinks,
Great.
the,
Cinco de Mayo's. cool.
yeah, see, so yeah, like it would be worth it to get that
Yeah,
professional person there, but then, someone just doing it on their own, that risk is just way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too much.
Well, and I would also suggest too, when it comes to partnering with a lender or title company or whatever, we spoke to Paramount Land Title yesterday, that's who our kind of title partner is. And I know that they would be willing to partner with any one of you guys on whatever you have in mind,
Mhm.
so if you're thinking about doing, even if it's just a broker open and you want to do, chicken salad sandwiches or something like that, they'll
Yeah,
show
they'll
up,
be
they'll help
happy.
you with
Yeah.
whatever, any of that stuff. I mean, so they're
There's
ready and willing to, help you guys grow your businesses, however you think that would look like.
yeah.
So
So we're going around back to was as far as social type things, as far as mailing out, Facebook, emails.
okay, so like, so we can kind of shift now to how do you guys add exposure and add, you've kind of covered all the things when it comes to the house and it's as presentable as you can get it. You've gotten the feedback, you've made whatever changes the seller can feasibly make, and you're still struggling to get it to sell. So, somebody asked us recently, is it worth joining another MLS? So the short answer to that is no, because it's still getting put out to the same consumer platforms. It's still going to show up on Zillow and all of that. You're not really adding that much exposure specifically to the general public, but so as far as advertising strategies and things like that, Facebook ads and or boosting can be useful. One thing that you can do is you can upload like an email list. So if you have a list of buyers that you have in your CRM or people that might be interested or leads from Sierra or anything like that, you can upload that list to Facebook and then it will advertise only to the people that have those email addresses. I don't know if you guys have seen our ads for our brokerage.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I usually do if I.
Like or share, yeah. But those are showing up to you guys because you're on the list that we have of realtors and that your Facebook matches your email.
I didn't know that was a thing. I've kind of put off Facebook. ads
So it
because they
is
confuse me.
it's called making a custom audience. It's not just
Okay.
selecting audience preferences, it is uploading a list. A lot of businesses will do it. Like if you get ads for like Target or things like that, if they have your information, they've probably uploaded a
Oh,
list,
that makes sense.
so
Okay.
definitely. Think about that. As you see ads, it's either stuff that you clicked on or they have your information and they have targeted you specifically. So just kind of keep that in your mind and you can kind of realize, oh, hey, gave them my email 2 years ago and that's why I'm getting this shoe ad or whatever the case. Mail outs is another one. So some of these are more like you just, put it out there and hope for the best, and some of them are more targeted. So the benefit of Facebook is that you can be more targeted. Obviously, you can't violate any kind of fair housing, issues or factors.
And they monitor that even. Because
Yeah,
I've had it
Facebook,
before,
yeah.
I was like trying to get to specific people that worked in Oak Ridge. I was
Yeah.
thinking that,
they don't let you adjust that at all.
yeah, it's like, oh no, you're targeting. It's like, oh, I can, but not in a minority. kind of
Right,
thing.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's hard to beat their
Mhm.
algorithm.
Yeah. So at least, sometimes you can, like if you have like an equestrian property, you can select interests based on your audience and things like that. And sometimes that can be a factor, but a lot of times if you kind of just have a more standard house, you are kind of limited in what you can select, because obviously you're not going to be able to limit it by family size or anything like that. So you more or less can select certain zip codes or within a certain radius of whatever city the listing is in. So that works to an extent. If you, the benefit of doing a mail out kind of option would be, if you do something like every door direct mail where you can choose the route.
I believe that I'm the one that noticed it's warm in here.
Yeah, it's a little toasty. I didn't know if you were trying to move behind me, and then I was like, oh, she's not over there.
Where'd you go?
Where'd she go? She's just hiding behind me.
Right under me, didn't even see me.
So, with every door direct mail, you can choose which route specifically, so it's a little bit more targeted than a whole zip code. And it's cheaper to do every door direct mail through the post office than paying standard postage. I think it's like 19 cents now. So there's specifics about how you can do it. Granted, there's other companies that will do mail outs for you, but if you want to do it yourself and you want to have a little bit more control over exactly where it's going, I would just say start with the rules around every door direct mail, because it does have to be a certain size. It can't just be any size postcards. The ones that I've sent out before were probably almost the size of a sheet of paper. They were probably like from here to here, and then 11, maybe 6 by 11 or something like that.
You upload your own things to there?
You have to get them printed, and so you print them off, and then you
Oh.
literally take them. I think they have to be in bundles of 100. But
Oh,
you
I
take
didn't
them
know
to the
this.
post office, however many you
Gotcha.
want to do, or maybe it's bundles of 50. Now that I'm
Yeah.
saying this. But you bundle them with twine. It's very specific about how you have to do it, but it is a lot cheaper than paying 50 cents a piece for a post.
Okay, yeah, because I
It's-
usually will print them from Canva.
Yeah.
And then manually put the
Yeah.
postage on myself.
Yeah, and you can ask the people at the post office too. That's probably what I would do. I would suggest looking at the requirements online for sizing,
Yeah.
and then ask the actual person at the post office, hey, but I did one for Broadacres, and it was, I think it was 2 different routes. But they'll tell you, like, you can select a route, and then they'll tell you how many pieces that route is. So it's 450,
Okay.
or it's 300, or whatever the case. may be.
Yeah.
And then you know how many, okay, if I'm gonna send just to this one street, that's the only thing of, like, they don't have like a minimum, but it would have to be the whole route. And then they just literally
Oh.
they add them to each.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I get what you're saying.
So if you ever get a postcard or a mailer and it just says like resident and it doesn't even have your address on it, it's probably that somebody has done one of these
Okay.
every door direct mails, and
Drop-off
they've just
things.
done the whole,
Okay,
thing.
that makes
But they
sense.
they deliver it with the rest of the mail.
So the other way you can do it with mail outs is to, target specific homes that you want to go to. These cards I just handed out are ones that I've done just to try to get business. And those pictures on the back are actually homes that I did sell in those neighborhoods. So I was just hoping, that they would say, oh, I know that house.
Mhm.
Did you put this together yourself?
I
Or did you
did.
go through Mark?
I did this. I don't know if you all, this was through Vistaprint.
Vistaprint.
Mhm.
Okay.
But yeah, I could, I'm really good at graphics, so if somebody needs help with that.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Do we need to sign? We don't.
Good to go. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So if you could make, so this was, trying to solicit business, but you could do the same thing if your house was for sale. But the better thing to do in the neighborhood is to walk your neighborhood and go talk to those neighbors and say, I just listed this house down here. It has this and this. Do you know anyone who might want to move in and live close to you? And Sometimes it works.
The other part of
Sometimes
that
you get
is-
leads just from that too.
Yeah, the other part of that is sometimes you get leads from it. At least it's giving that exposure, because then if your sellers have a friend that lives 3 doors down or whatever, then that's like, oh, your realtor came and talked to me about it, because, you know, they're gonna appreciate that. And it increases your chances of double siding your listing, you know, because then you may, you know, come across a buyer, or that neighbor may have a friend that's looking to buy. And if you've talked to whoever, there's a pretty good chance that neighbor's gonna pass along your information, as opposed to if you haven't, they're just gonna talk to their, you know, even if that neighbor's aware that the house is for sale, that neighbor probably has a realtor that's like, hey, my friend John can, you know, help you buy it or whatever.
And then email.
Email blasts. So you can use your Sierra CRM, or you can use MailChimp or something like that if you want to, but your Sierra CRM is capable of doing basically any kind of email blasting you would want to do. You can purchase lists of emails if you want to based on zip code. You can just send it out to your buyer database that's already in your Sierra CRM, whether that be people that you've added or people that came in as leads. It's still pretty good audience to be able to send it to. And you can track all of your like open rates and things like that. Did they, you know, visit whatever? Did they click on the house? And all that? So that's what I'll say is email blast. Okay, so we talked about broker opens and office tours. So the drawback to broker opens is that, you know, getting people to show up. Office tours, we should have a better turnout. So if you do want to organize something like that, even if it's just, you just want to do yours, we don't have a whole plan thing. You just want to say, hey, I'm having trouble selling this listing. Could you see if people from the office would come by on Thursday next week? I'll have pizza or whatever. You know, you probably have a pretty decent chance of getting a few people to show up and at least give you some kind of feedback. Open houses. I'm a fan of open houses. And the thing is, people do an open house and they don't get any buyer business from it, and they don't sell the house. And it's like, well, open houses are terrible. I'm never going to do another one. So I guess it would have been like 2018. My business was in a lull, and it's like, okay, I need to pick up some buyers. So how am I going to do this? I'll try the open house thing. And so I had figured out that if I did 3 open houses, I would pick up a buyer and they would buy something. Like they didn't necessarily buy the house, although I did have one that purchased the open house that I was holding. But I would pick up a buyer and they would normally buy in that price range, you know? So what I'll say when it comes to open houses is the best chance that you have, of getting your open house to be successful is posting it on the MLS, because that'll filter out the Zillow and all of that other stuff. Whether or not you want to try to run an ad or post it on Facebook or something like that, you can, but it's kind of, you know, going to be hit and miss. Getting as many signs as you can out there, and if you can put a balloon on them or something that's going to get people's attention, that's probably, of all of the ways that you're going to get people to show up, putting signs out a couple days before and putting out a lot of signs. I mean, I would suggest probably at least 8 or 10. That way, people that are driving by and the day before or 2 days before can see your signs and they know it's going to happen. If you put out a sign or 2 signs, you're not going to have as many. What I normally tell people is I try to work my way to the nearest intersection. You know, so if I'm going to put out open house signs, I'll try to, like, you know, put 2 or 3 streets over. That way, if I can get to like a red light or something like that, then at least they can get to from there to the open house. We have open house signs here if you ever need open house. Another thing about open houses is you can vary when you have the open houses. I probably wouldn't do like Friday nights, but I've done like Thursday nights, and I've done Saturdays and Sundays. I can't tell you, you might have slightly better turnout on the Sunday just because that's when people are kind of used to the open house being, but I've had pretty decent turnout on Saturdays, but even on weeknights, you know, so.
I've never done a Friday night, but I've done Saturday, Sunday.
I've done Thursday nights before and had a decent turnout, you know, because people see it on their way home or whatever. I did like 6 to 8 or something like that, you know, and during the summertime, there's still plenty of light, so it's not, you know. Anyway, just do what makes sense, I guess is what I would say as far as that goes. The other thing that I'll say about open houses, just from a standpoint of, you know, getting people there and stuff, food doesn't really play a factor. I would literally, like, I would suggest bottled waters, having a sign-in sheet, that way you can capture some info, filling out part of that sign-in sheet ahead of time. I use my left hand for a couple lines, that way they don't know it's me that's writing the same thing or whatever. But
Always do that.
that helps you, because people are more likely to fill out your form if somebody else has already filled out the form, you know, if it's a blank form and then your open house has been going for an hour and that buyer walks in, nobody else has filled it out, it's like, oh, I'm okay, you know? So it does make a difference.
As far as food, yes, I do usually bring some sort of dessert with the waters,
Yeah,
but, something to think about if you do is it something they can carry through the house? Do you want them to carry it through the house, or do you want them to say, please eat it in the kitchen? Which sometimes that works out better because you're now
Talk to them and stuff,
the
yeah.
captives. now.
I'll normally bring like a pack of cookies, you know, something from like a bakery or whatever, a little pack of cookies. And then waters and then napkins and maybe little plates. But the beauty of just doing napkins is they almost feel like they have to stay there, you know, because, you know, they don't have anything to carry it around on.
You just have to watch the kids. So that's why I was saying, you know, just
Yeah.
note what you're bringing. If it's really crumbly cookies and they give them to their 6 kids who take off through the house, then you're having to go and pick up all these crumbs of cookies.
Yeah,
And I think making it simple too, because
Yeah,
like back in 2018, 19, I would do some open houses and.
yeah,
And I would, one time I brought like a literal box of like brownies that was just like grab and
Yes,
go and water
yes.
bottles.
yeah.
And then the next weekend I did, like, I made this mocktail with rosemary and lemonade and I like put it in a little thing and they could have their little sprig of rosemary and drink it. And then I made caprese little things. Okay, no one touched the caprese because they were so scared to grab it. It was like so hard to like eat, you know, it was like tomato and basil and mozzarella. So yeah, the easy grab cookies definitely work better than a nice savory crunchy.
well, and you know,
Tell you, one cookie that's a big hit is from Food City Almond Joy cookies. Those are
Oh.
a big hit, but go ahead and cut them in small pieces because they're big.
they are excellent cookies though.
They are
You want to add
excellent.
some pounds, that's the way to go. Go ahead.
Coconut cookies with chocolate, I mean.
Yum. Oh my
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, yeah, anyway, it's good. Let's not talk.
Starving to death.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say the easier you can make it on
Yeah.
yourself, because at the end of the day, it's not gonna make an impact on whether or not somebody buys the house, and it's probably not gonna make an
Yeah.
impact on whether or not they would even show up.
Right.
So, you know, just a light little snack, that way they have a reason to stop and talk to you or
Mhm.
something like that is a good idea. But beyond that, you know, as clean as you can make it, where, you know, if they spill something, if they, you know, whatever, it's not a huge issue, you know, that's the way I kind of lean on it. As far as neighborhood canvassing go, I would just say, you know, print you up some kind of simple flyers and get them out there, you know, knock some doors. Maybe, I was told at one point, do the 5 houses on either side of you and 10 houses across the street. And then that way you've kind of at least hit that little micro area right around the listing, you know, it depends on the neighborhood, you know, but even if you can, it'll go a long way with the seller and a long way as far as your advertising efforts go. If you just at least either do a mail out to the neighborhood or do, you know, I mean, it's only gonna cost you, if you do, you know, this street or a couple streets, it might cost you 40 or 50 bucks, which is not a lot considering the amount of commission we make on selling a house. So it is well worth it, I think, to do some type of either small mailer or go walk the neighborhood. But if you can't spend a couple hours of your time to walk the neighborhood, then I would say at least go out and, you know, do the mail out.
And if you did go and walk and talk to the neighbors, what was something that you could like give to them?
I always had a flyer that I.
Okay, like just listing information and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so like, you know, I'm gonna have an open house this weekend. I
Yeah.
want you to know there'll be cars, lots of cars. I
Okay.
might end up parking in front of your house.
Yeah,
Wanted you to be aware, and this is the house, and then go into the house, it's a
Okay.
conversation.
I would say 90% of the time that I did it in junction with an open house,
Mhm.
because
yeah, that makes
then
sense.
Yeah.
A good
you're letting them know you have a reason for.
Yeah.
I'm not here to
You're
harass
not
you
just,
or say
Yeah.
you know.
anything.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that gets you around that too, because I have had people that have said, oh, you know, you're not allowed to solicit in here. And you can say,
Yeah.
I'm not soliciting, I'm not selling you anything, I'm literally letting you know about an event across the street.
There might be
you know.
cars,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's
Let you
always
know.
good for them too.
Feel free
Yeah.
to stop by and have a, you know, cupcake.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they're gonna stop anyway.
Because they're gonna stop you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're
Might
gonna
as well
talk to
get to
you.
know
Yeah, you
Robert.
get excited.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm to come see what it looked like.
Yeah. You almost need them to put a sign on their head.
I know.
We're the neighbor.
Yeah. Yep. That's covered everything.
Yeah, I think so. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or questions about how to do any of these things? I mean, as far as like, if you need to know how to do an email blast or you need, you know, advice on the every door direct mail thing, through the post office. We could do like a class specifically on some of those strategies and stuff. Just let us know if that's something you think would be helpful. A lot of those, though, as you start doing the process, for a class, we can't really get specific enough to say, okay, this is what you want to do unless it's for your exact thing. But if you do want to schedule time with us and you have a listing and you want to send it out to, every direct mail or something like that, we can at least help give you advice on how to do some of that stuff.
And if the market starts turning enough where that's comes back into play heavy duty like it was, 5 years ago, where you were mailing stuff out all the time. The other thing to do is we can get what they call they didn't call it a license. I can't remember what they
It's
call
like an
it.
emblem or
I know, some weird word that didn't apply, but basically it's a stamp that they give you from the post office that you pay for to get a reduced rate.
Oh, cool.
So we can do that if, we decide we need to, but
Yeah.
so far we've not.
And then I think that ends up being like 30 or 35. I mean, it's a pretty good discount, 20 or 30% off of your regular postage
Yeah.
amount. There's specifications with that too, because
Yeah.
the office loves rules, or the post office loves.
Yeah, they
rules.
do. You
So,
have to have so many.
and it's different, yeah, it's.
But I
different
used that
from-
particular card with that shelter, so.
It's even different than the Every Door Direct. I mean, it's totally different sizes, totally different, because with that. And do they have to be in the same,
That might have it on it, doesn't it?
do they have to be in the same zip code, or you have to package it by zip code, or?
You have to package it by zip code. So when you walk in with your stack of cards, you've already got them, sorted by the
Yeah.
different zips. Which I don't think they have to, because when I did it and would take it in, she'd say, oh, you've already sorted these. It's, yes, I have, but.
Yeah, there were other specifications with that too, where you had to put. John Wilson, and then you had to put or current resident or something. There was something specific about you had to.
You have to choose which way you're gonna do it. Are you gonna
Okay.
have it be forward? The key was, you want that postcard forwarded, which we really don't want it forwarded, whoever's sitting in that house.
Because if they moved and they didn't tell you, they're cut out of your life.
Yeah, goodbye.
Because they obviously didn't use you.
I always use the CRS labels.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'll pull from there.
Which is not grand, but
Yeah, and sometimes I don't wanna do as many as it clicks, I try to make it a certain amount, but then it'll capture a couple others, and so I've just kinda had to mess with that, but I feel like I like it, cause you can choose current resident or current
Yes.
homeowner and,
yeah,
or,
forward it. or-
or
Yeah.
return or not.
Another use for the Every Door Direct Mail thing would be if you do have an interest in setting up a farm that you're gonna consistently mail out to. That's a good use for this, because then you can just have the same route, you have the same size whether you do it at once a quarter or monthly or whatever you do. You can kind of plan on, okay, I'm always gonna need to print off 400 of these. It's always gonna be the same process for me to take it to the post office, and the people at the post office a lot of times can tell you, okay, you don't need to do, all of this work, just bring us the stack or whatever the case may be, so. I would just lean on that as far as, what they're willing to do, because,
Do you think the rules apply to different post offices or, okay?
Well,
'cause
I
I'll
don't
probably
think
be
you
out
can
in
take
Anderson
it
County.
anywhere but the main post office. If you were using that emblem or whatever they call it, it could
Okay.
only be at the main post office there at Watts Culver.
Oh,
So I don't know about the.
yeah, Every Door Direct
Direct.
Mail, you can take it to the whatever post office, and I don't, it may be that you have to, I don't know, because it may depend, okay, they're literally gonna
They
mail
might
this out from
be-
here, yeah.
yeah,
might be,
or I guess the area you're gonna be would need to be that specific.
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe, I don't know, you can
Okay, I'll
definitely
see.
look, I'm sure.
I'm seeing you thinking okay, if they have all these rules, what are the other rules that could be there?
Yeah, the other thing is, if you're gonna use it for something like that, choose a neighborhood where you would want all the listings, I wouldn't, do it in a neighborhood where if it finally does work out and your farm is finally turning over some fruit, it's like, I don't wanna list these houses, That was something, as a newer agent, was a total disconnect for me. I
That
would
is a
just,
good point.
I would go and I would advertise to a neighborhood because I liked the neighborhood, or it was an area that I was familiar with or whatever. But it's like, if I'm gonna spend these dollars on this neighborhood, or I could spend the same amount to advertise to,
Much nicer.
$2 million houses or whatever, just be aware of that. Whether or not you want to go after $2 million houses or not is kind of irrelevant, but just make it somewhere where it's like, okay, I'll be the person for this farm, that I'm
Yeah.
advertising to. So.
That's a good point, cause I sent out mailers to one of my like listings neighborhood, but it was out in Alcoa and all the houses were.
Yeah,
Probably shouldn't have sent those out, glad that no one called me. Actually, one person called y'all and said, stop having this person send me mailers.
Yeah, we get a lot of that.
we do,
It was only two, okay?
Yeah.
Just listed, just sold, woo.
yeah,
Well, and they call you to tell you that they would never list.
Yeah,
they're never
yeah.
gonna sell, and it's like, okay,
Great.
I didn't just send this to you.
Yeah.
I sent it to everybody.
Right, yeah, true, true.
Anyway, so, all right, if you guys don't have any other questions, I think that's it. So we appreciate you coming today and, we have another class on Monday, I think, of next week. Which is, working by,
The sphere.
adding to your sphere,
Sphere.
building your